Hi, I'm Melissa Washburn. I'm a graphic designer and illustrator here in Northwest Indiana, and I thought I would give you a little tour of my studio today. So this is just a room in my house that I set up to work and store my artwork and illustrations. And I've been working out of my home as a freelance illustrator and designer for almost 7 years now. And my work is mostly inspired by nature. I love hiking, I love birds, I love insects. I learn as much about them as I can at every opportunity. I've been through the Indiana Master Naturalist program through the DNR. So that's been a really fun way to stay inspired and keep fueling my illustration interests. So the first thing I'll show you in my studio is some of my book collection. I have a lot of books on botanical art, animals, birds, insects, things like that. A lot of vintage books, including some vintage Audubon illustrations. John James Audubon was kind of the father of bird watching and bird conservation in the United States. And then you'll also see I have a skeleton replica here. I'm very interested in anatomy, both human and animal, and the best way to learn that is through studying the skeleton and the various structures that make up the body. I have some mounted insects. You can see this is an African beetle that I've owned for a while. Things like that just kind of inspire me. I pick up crinoids, which are a type of fossil sea lily, and things like that I collect when I'm out. I also have a lot of plants and bones and various kinds of things that I just kind of collect and keep around the studio to inspire me and sometimes for sketching practice. Something else you'll notice in my studio is I have a lot of artwork by other artists. I trade with other artists very often. I bought a lot of prints and artworks over the years, so I like having that kind of thing around me. So a little bit more about what I do. I really work in mixed media. I was trained as a painter, so you can see I have painting racks in my studio with lots and lots of stored artwork from shows in the past, and it's kind of a place to keep everything. These days I'm working on a much smaller scale because most of my finished work is actually completed on the computer. So I work at this nice big long table over here in things like watercolor and ink and colored pencil, and I like to have all my little brushes really handy. You can see I have some color studies kind of laid out here. I'm taking an online class right now, and one of our first assignments was to really work on a color palette, so I had some fun exploring my watercolors and kind of figuring out what colors I tend to be drawn to and use in my illustrations. And then my favorite piece in my studio is my storage, my flat file storage, and I have everything organized by subject matter. So just to give a little taste of some of my work and how it gets put together, in my botanical drawer I have just piles and piles of illustrations of different plants and flowers. Some have been created for personal work, some have been created for pieces that ended up being part of client work. And then another example I can show is in my insects drawer. Right on top I have a painted lady butterfly, a milkweed beetle, and a bumblebee that were painted much bigger than life scale, as you can see. And once they're scanned into the computer and composed digitally, they might end up something like this. This was a full-page illustration I did for an article in a recent issue of Edible Michiana. So that's kind of how I go from the beginning illustrations to a final composition. So I hope this has been interesting, a little bit of insight into what I surround myself with and how I work here in my home studio. Thank you.